I think there's more than one definition. For me, there's like a technical definition, and that is that it's, a traditional folk music done with banjo, fiddle, and guitar. And my definition and understanding is that it is a living, growing entity that uses the style of old-time Appalachian music. And I think it tells stories that, because it tells stories, it evolves through time because the stories change. So that's sort of what I think of it as.
And I think it's very community-oriented, and that's how it's passed orally and through the instruments, is by people getting together and playing the old-time music.
Yeah, I agree on the community part of it, because people kind of especially pre-commercial, people got together in homes and played music and played for square dances, and which we've done a lot of. So on the instrumental side, of course, I'm a fiddler. A lot of it relates to sort of community events where people get together and actually dance. Like Carcassonne, for instance, Carcassonne, Kentucky, which you might be familiar with, and of course, I was a country dancer at Berea College, so that kind of got my introduction into fiddling. I thought, well, if I can dance, I can fiddle. So. I mean, for us, we were a band of 5 women, and so it was an identity that was who we are, and so the importance was just performing, but that ended up being a little exploited. At one point, we had a agent who called us the all-girl real world string band, as a way to sort of promote us. But as far as really telling the stories and being a part of the women's community, we, in the 80s when we got started, late 70s and 80s, there was a huge sort of mushroom or, excitement around women and women's music, women's production companies, women's, recording studios. Everybody sort of began to flourish as women, connected to issues, but also connected to culture. And so we kind of, were part of that sort of burst of energy, burst of feminism, burst of sort of asserting our own path. And that was sort of remarkable. Many of those things, people now are a little more mainstream. Some of those sort of very isolated, like record companies, Michigan Women's Music Festival, the production companies, have pretty much gone away as people kind of more integrated into mainstream culture. But at that same time, not only in music, but rape crisis centers, spousal abuse centers, there was a lot of energy being put to include women in a more equal way in society.
And I, being the mother of 2 children, who, when we started out as a band, my daughter was 2, and she traveled with us a lot. And after hearing the stories of like other women who had been in bands like Blanche Coldiron and Lily Mae Ledford, which she was in an all-woman band, but she didn't have that much control over the band. And for me, playing with 4 other women, my daughter says it was like she had 5 mothers, you know. It was so much easier because they took into account that I was a mother, and, you know, how do we organize our trips, and, you know, where do we play and everything. So that was really, really important to me.
Well, I think one of the reasons it is so important for the songs that women either write or do or play is that it changes the perspective of music. So much of when we first started playing old time together, there were half the fiddle tunes we couldn't use because of the lyrics in them. They were so misogynist or racist and
Deadly.
deadly. Yeah, you know, most of the ballads killed women off, most often because the guy had gotten them pregnant. But so it started us writing. I mean, we were Hazel and Alice fans, of course, when we first started, and well, always. But we started finding people who wrote songs that we felt we wanted to sing and share with folks, and we started writing our own. And so it seemed really important to get the women's point of view out there in a way that had never happened before.
And in fact, you know, Sue wrote a song called What Shames to Be, and that's on They'll Never Keep Us Down, which had to do with the woman coal miner, you know, and we'd often play at their annual conferences. And Bev, of course, wrote a song called Little Old Me Done Got Wise, which is sort of the reprise to the murder ballads. And sort of, so it began to be a pretty interesting movement in of its own. So.
And back to the old time thought, you know, at Highlander Center, we would sit around in a circle with Hazel Dickens and Si Kahn, but we also sit around the circle with women who had never recorded. But Florence Reese has written one of the most powerful, memorable songs, Which Side Are You On? And Lois Short was there playing her banjo, and she told us stories about how she was so excited to be out playing the banjo and singing and dancing that when she got married, she had to put that away. Her husband had her put her banjo in the closet, and she never played all the time she was married and raising her family. And she said, but he's dead now. So I'm here and I'm having a great time. And Phyllis Boyens, Nimrod Workman's daughter, was there, you know, and she's recorded a little bit, but they were passing on the old time, community-oriented, singing about issues that were important to them. And it was a powerful statement for us.
Sometimes when we were preparing to play for some sort of a rally, we might use the old songs, the old tunes, and flip some words in it to make it appropriate for that particular gathering. But I don't think we often used other people's. I have used other fiddle tunes and put words to them, but they didn't originally have words that I knew of.
Well, first of all, we didn't make a career of music. we attempted to, but that never really came to full fruition. And we all had day jobs eventually. So, but I don't think sexism necessarily, was the reason we weren't commercially viable. Or I think being, I don't know, feminist hillbillies, I mean, maybe in of itself wasn't the commercial, angle. But we'll never know. We just didn't. But we did. Yeah, we've had a couple agents, and the first one who heard us at the Carter family fold, and hired us for a variety of things. Sort of got us in a manner in which we didn't feel that comfortable with. I mean, we were just hippies and just out to kind of have a good time, play some music, do some traveling, and we, some doors opened because we were all women, especially, given the fact that there was a subculture of women's production companies and things. And some held us back, I guess. What do you think?
Well, when we first started, which was in 1977, when we made trips, they were usually to the Northeast, like New York and D.C., and we had more jobs up there than we had here locally, except for like benefits for the Women Writers Conference here or Rape Crisis Center. We were called on for things like that, Take Back the Night rallies. There was even there is still a big bluegrass festival that happens around here. And they finally invited us, probably about 1980, to come play. But then they didn't invite us back because we were too political. We were up there singing coal mining, anti-strip mining songs, and union songs, and we were just too political for
Well, their main
the local.
endowment was from the coal companies, so
Yeah.
they didn't exactly.
So, but as time, moved on, I think Kentucky realized what they had in us and embraced us to a great extent. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so, which was great.
We did have sort of a local following. We traveled a lot, and we were very lucky. We had a really wonderful agent, Josh Dunson of Real People's Music out of Chicago, and he booked us for all kinds of festivals, and actually booked us for a tour in Italy, and so those were fantastic. And of course he was totally into the politics and totally got, whatever, as far as how we would be promoted or whatever. So that ended up being a really good relationship. We kind of got to the point where we couldn't be in Chicago one night and then drive to, I don't know,
DC.
we kind of abandoned that kind of thing. Bev had a teenager, and she didn't want to travel with us anymore.
Although she did travel with us to Italy and played violin with us.
She's very selective in the gigs she would go to. But so we kind of abandoned ship at that point. But what I was sort of emphasizing, that we had such a strong presence in our own communities, and we would do lots of benefits, and we would pull people together around issues, and people they found joy in sharing, an evening with us or a event with us, and so that ended up being sort of our focus over time.
Mm-hmm. Well, when we first started our connection with the Highlander Center, it was during the time that the Stearns strike and the
Brookside?
No,
No.
later, the one we went on the picket line for.
Jericho?
Oh,
Jericho.
yeah.
Jericho. We played a benefit, and Guy and Candy came, and from that point on, they started having these gatherings that felt like a rejuvenation for artists who then go out and work on the issues that are important to their particular region, and being a part of that was for us an incredibly formative experience. It gave purpose to what we were doing with our music, and besides just having fun, you know, it suddenly there's a good reason for doing it, and it introduced us to people like Hazel, like Pete Seeger was there one time, and Sarah Ogun Gunning, Florence,
Sweet Honey in the Rock.
Sweet Honey in the Rock. I mean,
Jane Sapp.
I mean, it's just like the list of people who have used music as a tool for positive social change. You got to sit there and hear how they did it, why they did it, and how you might do it. And it was forever, I would say, one of the more important things that ever happened in my life, being connected to Highlander.
Nimrod Workman. I mean, there's just, everybody seemed to have gone to Highlander, and I think it was partially, I mean, it was a research and educational center, so I mean, there were scholars who came, and of course, but with Guy and Candy living right there and both being musicians, and really thought that music, not just talk, was, you know, an important part of any social movement, and certainly if you're going to have rallies or try to, you know, bring people together to share experience and to go forward, try to make a change, then having music as part of it was just really important. And they helped us, they mentored us. We'd go for a weekend at Highlander, and then we'd come back to a little club at O'Keefe's and be like a small room about this side, and we'd have a series of concerts and you know, and slideshows, and like women in non-traditional occupations. You know, you'd have people coming in who were learning to be carpenters or whatever, and then so we'd sing some songs related to that, or we'd have an environmental, you know, theme or a labor theme, or so.
Yeah, we did like 4 different concerts.
You're right. Yeah.
That was so much fun.
So they were very instrumental in sort of making sure we were kept on track on stuff, and we just got to learn other people's songs. Borrowed chewing gum from Hazel.
Our show was the same, whether we were playing on the picket line or we were playing in Sun City, Arizona, or a home concert on Long Island, or the National Women's Music Festival. We sang the same songs, you know, our message was the same.
Well, I'd say after we got together, the first musician that really grabbed a hold of me was Lily Mae Ledford, and she lived here in Lexington, and we first met her by taking her up to the Old Time Music Festival up in Cincinnati, and she rode with us and started telling stories, and from that point on, I got to be really close with her, and would go spend time at her house and such. But so she's the first one, but you all can
Well, Hazel Dickens was a powerful woman, and I loved her songwriting. I loved her voice. I loved everything about her. She was just so real. And also Jean Ritchie. Her songs really moved me. She was singing about community. And let's see, who else?
Well, we can go. We went through almost everybody at Highlander, but we met all kinds of people, of course, through the Michigan Women's Music Festival, and we did other music festivals that were women-oriented. There was one called Southern Comedy and Music Festival. So, people like Holly Near, Melissa Etheridge, Teresa Troll, those folks who were kind of more West Coast, more than anything, that Barbara Higbee, and we did, combined shows with like Barbara Higbee.
Robin Flowers.
Yeah, they've come through this way. We also, but this back at Highlander, one we haven't mentioned is Joyce Brookshire, who we actually did. We were her backup band for a recording that she did, and she was from Cabbagetown in Atlanta, Georgia. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she wrote some incredible songs, really interesting and funny, like who's going to be my guardian angel, but anyway, so she was also not really commercial in any way, but just was a community organizer, a community presence in a very poor community in Atlanta, and created culture and songs around that, and then shared them with us at Highlander and other places. And Elise Witt was very instrumental in getting that project together, and is also fantastic sort of community voice and musician. There's plenty more, I'm sure.
Blanche Coldiron, we mentioned her, Bev mentioned her earlier. She and Lily May grew up just, stone's throw from each other. Lily May's had the opportunity or found a way to do music most of her life. Whereas Blanche, her parents stopped her, and then her husband stopped her, and then her daughter was very sick, so she didn't get to really start performing until her later years. And she was an incredible banjo player. I was fortunate enough the Kentucky Arts Council started a program that had apprenticeships to masters, and I got an apprenticeship to Blanche, which was one of the best experiences that I've ever had.
Yeah, and you pulled her in. We did some joint stuff with her. It was, she was kind of an unknown treasure.
And Kate Long is somebody that was down at Highlander a lot, and we started seeing her at other festivals and hanging out with her, and she's quite a songwriter.
And of course, Kathy Fink and Marcy Markser, which, were just old friends, and also, did many joint concerts. They played at our 20th anniversary concert, and they played at our last concert, which was in 2016. So they're good old souls. We try not to get them too often on the stage because they can play a lot better than we can.
One of the best things that ever happened in my life, playing with Lily May.
Sue even wrote a song for her.
Yeah.
Because we played, she was from around Stanton, right? Or
Yeah,
Powell County.
Yeah, Powell and Wolf.
Right, and they did a festival. Did they call it the Lily Mae Festival? But she was still alive and played at that one that we
In the
played
Red
at,
River
right?
Gorge.
That was
In
a
the Red River
protest trying to keep the Red River from being
Down.
dammed. And it's the
okay.
only protest I think Lily Mae ever did.
Yeah, it's Lily Mae wasn't exactly political in that, but she was. We did one show with her too that was at the Unitarian Church, and remember she said, "Well, I understand this is to support women and women in movement or something, you know." And I'm all in support of that. So, but yeah, I mean, she brought a lot of joy, and she loved our music. I think particularly loved that we played banjo and fiddle, and had carried on a lot of that, the old songs, the old fiddle tunes and things.
She used to say, "Don't you girls go and get married, it'll ruin your band." She had no idea what she might be inferring, but
Right, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Didn't hold true, did it? Now we're married.
Maybelle Carter was very important to me as far as a prominent woman figure, and she played guitar, and people followed the way she played guitar, and so I really listened to them a lot. And as a band, we decided we wanted to do a Carter family song, but we thought, well, let's do one that one of the women wrote. And we finally found one that Sarah had written called Lonesome Pine Special. And so I thought that was pretty cool too. Mm-hmm. But our travels down to the Carter family store were just so unique, so interesting. And Jeanette Carter was just, man, she ran the show, and it was just, she didn't like that we brought a piano player first.
That was 10 years after we had played there.
Yeah.
We showed up with a piano player.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
like,
Okay.
well, we got a piano back there. We can move it out.
It was like a whole step off, and we had all tuned to it.
But you talk about
hilarious.
community. That was just the epitome of what old time music is all about. Drawing in the community, everybody dancing from 3 years old to 80 years old. So it was great.
Yeah, I know. I remember when we were first, even at the Bluegrass Festival, which, Bluegrass is even more dominated by men than old time. Old time, we've sort of inched our way in and sort of now have a very strong presence, I think, as women in old time music and sort of folk music generally. But bluegrass, and you played at that Bluegrass Festival, and then there'd be these little jams, around the festival, and you could see that the guys are just really in there, just playing away, and if there are any women, they're kind of back, or they're playing the bass, or, and so there's this hierarchy that's kind of unwritten.
Well, I have wondered lately why people don't record women's songs. It seems like that just doesn't happen at all, and I can't figure out why. Cover women's songs.
Uh-huh.
Any songs that are written by women, except like Nashville writers who go unknown, for having written a song that somebody makes a hit out of. But
only some of the really top women musicians like Judy Collins or something get people covering her, or Joni Mitchell. I was just thinking of people that...
But they're usually women.
That's true.
that cover them, you know. One reason we picked the name Real World String Band, we didn't want anybody to know that we were all women. Just looking at the name, yeah.
But I do think we formed at a moment, a crossroads moment, when we formed, and people, especially women, were just kind of coming out of that sort of passive moment in history, and became a little more assertive in literature and in music. But I think that there was absolutely a need for women's production companies. I don't think we would have been produced as much. You know, we wouldn't have had as many outlets if it wasn't women taking it on. Like, okay, we are going to make sure women get produced. We're going to make sure we have a role in our cultural. We're not just going to be second-class citizens, and we're going to have our own stuff going so that we can celebrate our, women. And there was a women's writers conference that was very important, I think, here at the University of Kentucky, and still exists today. But it got started then too, and we'd be the house band for the women's writers conference, and stuff. So there was sort of this pollination going on too of people just being around each other, getting a lot more assertive, getting more opportunity.
And you two did the women's radio.
Oh yeah,
and that was really important.
We didn't
to all
start
that.
it. A woman named Sky Hedman started a Women's Sounds, which was a radio show just playing women's music, and we interviewed a lot of people for that.
It was on WEKU FM in Richmond, part of the Eastern Kentucky University, and Sky Hedman started it in 1979, and it went for 20 years. Every Sunday night, 2 hours, we played nothing but recordings by women. I mean, they could have men on them too, but fronted by women. And anything from Bessie Smith to Holly Near to Alex Dobkin to, Patsy Montana. We kept it going for 20 years. And we had lots of women writers and musicians come and be guests on the show too.
Well, I'll start out because right now it was actually incredibly important through COVID, because I along with some other folks started an old time jam, which happened and continues to happen. It's been now for about 4 years, every Monday night from 6:30 to 9 at a local brewery. And we did it outside during COVID. We did it, and then we had a big warehouse. Right now, it's in a big warehouse. Yeah, we wore masks for a while. We're through it, but the idea that it is old time music. This was mostly fiddle, banjo music of old time, Kentucky tunes, but other tunes that people brought in and shared, and we learned it all by ear, and it created a community of musicians that
old and young,
intergenerational, that just are into playing music. They all feel they can contribute something, even if they don't know all the tunes, and they can hang out, or they begin to learn tunes from each other, and then there's this whole body of music literature, basically, that's shared in the community, and doesn't have anything to do with audience. It doesn't have anything to do with. Has some to do with beer drinking. But it just created, our own, I call it my church, It's like everybody shows up, and we have a moment of shared music. So I think old time has been that, because it's also a simple music. It's not a, you could learn a tune in a week and come back and be able to join in. So it's and if you couldn't play fiddle, you can play banjo and just play half the notes. Or you could play guitar and,
Don't play any of the notes.
And, we might not get out of D, so the guitarist would only need 3 chords. So it's a music that's accessible to people, and it creates a community. So
There's an intimate nature to old time music that doesn't exist in other forms, I think. Jazz it might, but usually, even with a larger audience, it has more of an intimate feel and an accessible feel to it. I also think that, and you sort of hit on it, that playing a fiddle tune for a long time is meditative. You get into a groove and you just are lulled into that space. So.
Yeah, it has its rewards for mental health.
Yes.
But I do think earlier when Sue said that also as an instrument of issues and social movements, I mean, it has been the lyrics, not just old time being fiddle and banjo. There are other aspects of it that are just as community oriented and just as meaningful to people because of a lyrical content or a relationship with a community that's supporting a community issue. Mm-hmm. Oh, we've changed the world, haven't we?
Yeah. I think we held a large community together here in Lexington that has lasted for 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That.
A shared sort of shared history.
Mm-hmm.
When things are important, somebody needs somebody needed an operation, or somebody who needed a service dog or something, it's like, oh, well, let's throw a benefit and play some music,
Mm-hmm.
and those were all people we knew in the community, and then just celebrating, it's a celebration. Music is always a celebration, so just getting together and
Keeping a tradition alive, and a culture and a history that, we don't need to lose that.
And one of the things that I think we did was represent this kind of music in our region within the women's community, women's music community. There weren't many string bands, and so, we had some things that were difficult with some of the producers even then, that they were a bit prejudiced against hillbillies. Even though they were women producers, they,
True, yeah, making
here
Appalachian music palatable.
yeah, bringing culture to the mountains at festivals that they'd put on, and it's like, we've got culture, wearing overalls and smoking a corncob pipe as she walked around the festival. It's like, from California, that's not her usual attire. So there are bits and pieces of prejudice from all directions sometimes.
Yeah, I think we shared the culture with people who didn't have a sense of it,
Mm-hmm.
and didn't have an appreciation of it. I think that's very true, especially, where, you think about the 80s, even in our grouping, they were going to go to the clubs and dance, and I'm all for that too. But Prince, and there's a lot of that kind of connection, but then they come and listen to us sing our coal mining songs, and they're okay with that.
We did a tour, a West Coast tour with the Osborne brothers and a French bluegrass band, and we went up and down the West Coast, and the LA Times, the only thing they could relate to us and compare us to was the Go-Go's. That's all they could say was, they're a band like the Go-Go's.
They're
They're all women.
They're an all-women band. Yeah, that's the only ones they could come up with. So I guess we were an anomaly.
Yeah.
Culturally, I guess we were pretty far removed, but it was great. And of course, the French band, they couldn't speak any English, but they could sing in English. So they sounded, just like Ralph Stanley or something. And then they come out and we tried to talk with them. They were just trying to figure out where they could go
What
find
is this Easter
cowboy.
boonie?
They wanted to find cowboy boots. I think that in Kentucky in particular, there's just a real revival going on, including women and men. And, for instance, one of the main archivists, kind of documenter, John Harrod from Kentucky, he has a daughter, Anna Harrod, and she's got a little group called the Possum Queens, and they're playing traditional music, and
The local honeys.
the local honeys, and Carla Grover, and
We just lost one today, so I'm a little Lily Mae's granddaughter.
yeah. But I do. There's, let's see, Stephanie and Andy, Stephanie Jeter and Andy. Partially too, of course, in East Tennessee, as you know, and in Moorhead, Kentucky, you can actually get a degree in old time music or some semblance of it, and I think that has generated a lot of interest. So.
Oh, I do too. I think
We have a couple here, Daniel and Amy Carwile, who teach fiddle and from anything from contest fiddling, but old time and classical, and they cover it all. But Karen's even taken lessons from both of them.
Both terrific.
They are really spreading, the knowledge out to young people and who become fantastic fiddlers. And one of them comes to our jam. Yeah, she's the youngest member. I think she's 12. And she keeps up with all the old timers. It's great.
Yeah. It's interesting too. They met in Weiser, Idaho, which was where the contest is. But he's from Alabama and she's from Idaho, and they set up shop here. So they're really contributing. Lots of people are contributing to sort of. I think it's very alive right now.
And there's, you probably know of Sam Gleaves. He's a mover and a shaker, and I have great faith that he's going to make a difference in music here, in not only just because of his skill as a musician and a folklorist, but also his politics are impeccable. So.
And the McLean family band was very important for keeping the tradition going. And the oldest, Raymond, is now retiring from the program of traditional music at Morehead State University. And
Raymond Jr. actually.
yeah,
so.
Raymond Jr. And Ruth, and what's the other daughter's name? I can't remember.
Alice.
Alice. They're still playing music around here.
And somebody that hardly anybody knows about is a woman is Donna Lamb.
Oh yeah.
She has accompanied her father, who has been the fiddler for Berea stuff forever, and
Louis Lamb.
Louis Lamb. But she's an incredible guitar player despite having terrible arthritis, and she's a luthier.
Mm-hmm.
So she's a woman musician hardly anybody knows about.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because when I was thinking earlier about women fiddlers, because I actually got a little grant to record women fiddlers in Central Kentucky. But when I started fiddling, I could, Lily Mae could play the fiddle, but didn't really play it much by the time.
Mm-mm.
But she's one of the few, really. I guess, Blanche Goldiron obviously could play a little fiddle too.
Mm-hmm.
But now there's a lot, and there's a really good bluegrass fiddler, Katie Penn, who I recorded, and of course the local honeys, and Deborah Payne, who works with Sam Gleaves, and
Maggie Lander.
Yeah, who also does Irish. I did want to say that my first introduction to Guy and Candy Carowin was actually at Berea College when I was a student there. And they brought Bessie Jones up.
Oh.
And I don't know if you know her, but she was from the Sea Islands.
Georgia Sea Islands.
Georgia Sea Islands, and an African-American woman who taught dance, because this was at Christmas Country Dance School, which is a week-long dance extravaganza that the college puts on. And they invited, of all people, Guy and Candy Carowin. It was really interesting. And Bessie Jones, taught dances that were like play party games, where like with a little handkerchief and you'd walk around it. And we eventually used some of that material, because when we do for a folk production group, like say up in Michigan or Wisconsin, they would want a concert and then a dance, and so, or we'd be in the schools for the day and stuff. So we carried on. So that was another way of traditions being passed on. That and both Guy and Candy had such great connections with sort of the folk pulse that we were able to sort of get through both at Berea College and at Highlander Center, and certainly Appleshaw.
Mm-hmm. I worked in the schools here in Kentucky for about 25 years as a artist in resident, and taught a whole bunch of those play party games from Bessie. And from Gene Ritchie. Gene Ritchie had a whole parcel of play party games to use too.
We've done so much, it's hard to remember it all.
Or maybe it's
really,
best.
No, it's great to reminisce.